Okay, can anybody hear me? I think it's working. The camera is now officially set. I've just got a couple of things on my screens over here. There we go. Yes. Yes. It's working. Woohoo. Okay. Fantastic. So let me just make that smaller over there and just talk to the other stream. Let everybody know. And you can hear me as well. Amazing. Okay. So I have to edit this. Alrighty then. And of course that would do that. Can't use the keyboard during that program. It's a new way of streaming, and so that's why I'm testing it out as well. So I'm kind of learning the kinks at the same time while understanding how these Mercury retrograde experiences, like to test new material out during a Mercury retrograde is a really silly thing, but you know, we don't have to be all perfect. I just want to try and access better. There we go. Okay, I am ready. So let's just access so I can see the chat box fully, and everybody can hear me in the chat as well. So that's also great. So first thing I want to say is hi everybody and welcome to just a kind of full moon in Libra Q&A and just hanging out with me today and me hanging out with you and just kind of chatting a little bit of astrology as I always love to do. And yeah, just connecting, to be honest. So again, yeah, yeah, Emily, I can understand. I know with the computer, right? So loads of people coming from different parts of the world to here. This is amazing. From Amsterdam, from Montreal. And I love this type of experience where we've got all this huge connection. So what do I want to talk about today? I contemplated a lot about today's conversation, and I felt talking a little bit about the nature of Saturn retrograde, I think, is an important thing. We have somebody from the UK, of course, and France, so that's amazing as well. Welcome, everybody. I really hope that you're going to enjoy the time that we're going to share with each other here. So I'm just kind of just tuning myself in at the moment and just getting my voice a little bit settled in that sense. So Mercury and the Sun and Uranus have been really, really active, as I mentioned in the forecast that I had recently done, I think a couple of days ago. And my whole entire electrical system is completely fried. You can hear it in my throat, that my throat and my body is definitely under some attack in that sense, or I'm definitely dealing with my nervous system saying chill out and calm down, as well with Jen as well. So the joys of parenting and the deals that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis there while doing all this work. So did anybody in the chat, have you had the opportunity to read the full moon article? And if you haven't, I'm going to post it in the chat right now from the Raising Vibrations website. And I highly recommend reading the article. I really found it to be a fascinating experience to write, and chatting to Jen a lot about how these energies are working is a really fun experience, for us. And we found an intense amount of insight. So there's a link in the description to the article, and I highly recommend going reading that when you've got an opportunity. After this stream, you'll probably have a lot more questions maybe afterwards that you can write down in comments, in the forecast, the forecast, or you can write it in the comments in this live stream once it's done, and I'd be happy to respond to them when it's available, when I can do that. So, Saturn, that was my first point of entry for today's conversation. And I'll just start with that. And then, as I said, this is a Q&A experience. So for any of you that are wanting to ask questions regarding, your own personal natal chart and specific angles and aspects that are being made, I'd be happy to respond to those. And just exactly that, just general questions and answers that you've got around the astrology at the moment, and what maybe if there's more clarity that you're seeking for as well. So Saturn retrograde in Sagittarius, and it's at 27 degrees. Saturn is the archetype within our consciousness, okay? That, and I'm sure you've heard me share this a million times, but it's really important to grasp the fundamentals of each archetype as a way of objectifying what it represents. And so Saturn represents the formation and the crystallization of energy within this universe, within this physical plane of existence, okay? And so things like this tiger's iron stone, okay, this would be a Saturn energy, okay? Because it's the formation and crystallization of energy that is static, okay? It's as much as this can move like this through space, right? Saturn in itself represents this element, okay? It's crystallized in this form. It doesn't change the form. Whereas if I had a glass of water over here, which would be a good thing considering the fact that, I do need to sort of quench my thirst with my current throat issues. But if I had water and I poured water in two glasses, so I had one glass that was really large and had a bowl shape, and then I poured it into a glass that was, tall and cylindrical in that sense, the water would take on the shape of the glass. So consciousness is an energy would be represented through water, and Saturn would be represented through the form that doesn't change. Does that make sense? So crystallization. Now, it's ironic because as I mentioned the nature of crystallization and form staying in one place, it doesn't mean that it's indestructible, okay? And so what's interesting about the nature of Saturn is that it has a co-energy pattern, and this is Uranus. And that's why in classic astrology, Uranus was ruled by Saturn, and Aquarius was ruled by Saturn, or co-ruled by Saturn. And the reason why is because in order for Uranus to exist, it must have something that creates its energy. So when you have Saturn, Uranus exists because something must break the form in order to manifest liberation, right? So Saturn in the astrology chart, wherever you see it in your astrology chart, and whenever you're trying to understand it through your transits, understand that it is an energy that fractures and breaks down all forms of patterns and behaviors and experiences that have been crystallized in time, okay, because this crystallized at some point in time, and that crystallization in itself, being fractured by Uranus, creates the dynamic that liberation exists. So liberation only exists relative to oppression, or liberation only exists relative to something that has been solidified that creates the limitation. And so the co-ruling energy patterns of Saturn with Aquarius in classic astrology is reflected through that understanding. But now we understand that technically the co-ruling exists, in my opinion at least, and I feel for maybe sort of like progressive astrologers, that need for discernment is very, very important, I feel, because they are very separate energies in that sense. They play different roles, but yet together must form a way in which they cooperate. I hope that makes sense. So, which is funny because these two archetypes don't. They don't like each other at all. Saturn wants to make everything consistently regular and just like, hey guys, every single day we do the same thing. Keeps us safe and secure, right? You don't want to wake up to a world, think about it, in which the day-to-day activities and events are the same every single day in a monotone existence. You would want to have some, radical experiences that allow us to feel alivened by our experience. So right now, this Saturn story that I'm talking about and its relationship to Uranus is that transformation. So transformation, just as in the Transformers films where the cars switch from a car to a robot, okay, the form is still the same, but they're transforming. So Uranus correlates to the nature of transformation, okay, not Pluto, not Scorpio, okay. There's a difference, and I keep on sharing this in a way because I feel like it's really important to disseminate it into the collective, is that, as Jeffrey Wolf Green spoke about, transformation is the process of an object that is literally, in this particular instance, still staying the same material, but if I had to break it, right? So that's the Saturn and Uranus archetype in that sense. So we have Saturn retrograde in Sagittarius, and we have the Sun on top of Uranus, as well as Mercury, okay? And this is an interesting dynamic, because when you look at the planet that is actually influencing Pluto, which is in Capricorn, and that is the ultimate desire, everything moves through Capricorn, or through Pluto, pardon me. If Saturn is co-ruled by Capricorn, and Saturn is influencing Pluto, and Pluto is currently under a square with Uranus, you can see very, very clearly that any energy pattern currently right now in which Saturn is transiting through, okay, is going under a deep transformation through the Uranian field. Does everybody understand that process in which this is working? Because Uranus is squaring Pluto. Uranus is in Aries, so it's doubly emphasized in terms of liberation, need for freedom. That's why there's a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of frustration out there. There's a lot of pain out there. There's a lot of hypersensitivity. There's a lot of stimulation on the adrenal glands and the electrical system in which we're all experiencing. And of course, this is all being stimulated by the intensity of Uranus in Aries, but it's connecting to Pluto in Capricorn. Okay, so on a deep level, on a soul dynamic level, which can't be really comprehended, it's abstract and subjective to each of us. But when I say the word soul, I mean just energy moving in a direction that is manifesting the perception of evolution, as it were. So what we're dealing with here is Pluto in Capricorn and the crystallization of emotional experiences and identities and ways in which we've related to ourselves on a deep, deep, deep level. This is crystallized in layers and layers and layers. I mean, if you had to really observe, if you had to see this over here, you can see there are layers in the formation of this tiger iron stone. Okay, and maybe even there you can see it there as well. So imagine if you had to understand Pluto through Capricorn is literally drilling down all of the layers that are manifesting through the human condition, which is why there is a lot of stuff coming up for us, a lot of stuff that is manifesting through the energetic field of us as human beings on an individual level, and then of course on a collective level in terms of governmental shifting and changing our perception towards how we perceive governments and the way that they work, and climate change and all this type of stuff that's out there, and which just fries the electrical system because of the amount of digestion of information in which we have to process that is manifesting at this stage right now. So when we look at Saturn's transit through Sag, and we understand the dynamics of the crystallization, and we understand the dynamics of Uranus fracturing it, you can see that there's a lot of questionability around what is the nature of your specific truth? What is the nature of your way in which you govern your own physical vessel? I mean, this is a big question that I feel is so intense for us right now, because when you look at the body in itself, it is a representation of Saturn, because it's the physical limitations in which we carry the energetic layers of karmic dynamics, right? So this is why the word purification is such a a heightened word in spiritual communities, because it's about releasing these sediments that are layered within the body. And any deep esoteric and occult teachings will teach you about the alchemical transformation that takes place and the purification that takes place as we basically purify ourselves of lead, which is the Saturn archetype, the crystallization, you know. So when we look at the individual form that we all individually carry within ourselves, this is happening on an individual level. And then as a entire global body, because the earth in itself is one whole cell in and of itself. It's a whole entire body of itself. So that then through the morphogenetic field, which of course is the nature of God, goddess, or neutrino stream, the fabric of reality, if you wish to call it, the non-separateness in which we experience, that dynamic, as individually as we shape and transform our own personal truths, that manifests then through a collective sphere. Okay. And this Saturn retrograde transit in its like depth has a very profound level of reflection, the word reflection. And Saturn in itself on a more psychological and human level. So just as you're following this conversation with me, when I talk about Saturn in its natural like earth form, then we talk about the nature and the process of crystallization, the formation of something, okay, right? That is then static through time. When we look at the nature of the human being interacting with something that has crystallized itself, then what we have is the perspective as well as the prism of emotional as well as, let's just say in a very simple term, the reflection of an experience, okay? So a way to understand the nature of reflection as it's linked to the Saturn archetype is naturally, how do I put this across? It's naturally that as you're watching this communication with me, and naturally as we are recording this, and say for instance you're watching this at a different point in time, okay, the crystallization of this video is the Saturn archetype. You're reflecting back on a previous moment in time in which the nature of that entire experience is held. So Saturn retrograde in Sagittarius reflects the reflections that we will go through relative to the last sort of direct cycle that it's been on, okay? And this happens for all planetary energies, but in particular Saturn, because Saturn reflects, well, is the nature of the crystallized pattern. So we will go back into time, as it were, if we want to use that type of terminology here. If we go back into the experiences, and then what happens is that we see it from a different point of view. Not necessarily all the time, but most of the time we get a different perspective because we're in a different, this is going to get a little bit spooky right now, but I hope that you can follow me in terms of what I'm actually trying to share with you here, right? Okay, just give me a second. I see that there's some people that are saying that the internet connection's a bit bad over there. So just hold our thought there for a second, and I'm just going to see if, okay. Can anybody tell me in the chat quickly if the video is like laggy for everyone, or is it just certain people? Because then I can maybe adjust something on my screen over here to allow for better like output quality, as an example. So I set the screen. If you just change your resolution settings, that would be able to help that process come along. Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So let me come back to this, okay? Because I didn't want to lose our thread here, because I was getting some really profound information coming through. So this retrograde, whenever you look at Saturn retrograde, you're basically, let's say that Saturn, Saturn moves from 22 degrees Sagittarius. I think it was even a little bit further. I can't remember exactly, but let's just say from like 17 degrees, 18 degrees Sagittarius, it went direct. Okay, the last time it went direct. And it goes direct completely. And we go through experiences in which we emotionally respond to on a human psychological level, okay? Right? And we digest this process. We experience it and it's like it's there and there's this drama and it's whatever it's happening between family dynamics or between work and career, between trust and intimacy, between resources, wherever your Saturn's transiting your house, you go through these experiences. And each of them are, in some level, only grasped about, I would say, 50% the first time that Saturn goes round, as it covers new ground, okay? And then, as the retrograde pattern happens again, what happens is those crystallized experiences then come back into your consciousness as Saturn moves back over those points in time and space again. And you get to see it from a different point of view. So you get to see an event that happened at a certain point from a different point of view. And then that perspective of interaction creates a third dynamic. And that's the fifth D. This is the capacity for human beings to understand the Uranian cycle, the Uranian consciousness, the ability to understand multidimensionality, right? So when we talk about quantum theory and that stuff, it is this capacity to objectify Uranus, the nature of experiences, in order for us to process it from a different point of view and allow for us to then have a, say for instance, 75% capacity to understand what the soul was revealing to you through a karmic dynamic. Do you understand that? Okay, so as we interact with the Saturn retrograde through Sagittarius right now, the nature of these core belief systems and ideologies, okay, so Sag reflects truth, in other words, direct experience of things relative to your own perception of stuff, and Pisces reflects the nature of the ideals. In other words, how would we have loved to experience the thing versus the way that it actually happened, right? Because all of us, to a certain degree, would love to have an experience happen in which the most ideal way of synchronicity would unfold for us. And, when our ego is still being informed and integrated within ourselves, of course, we're going to have dynamics within us that are not going to be fully like idealistic. It will just be idealistic in that sense. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here is that we have these truths and ideals that manifest themselves and we interact with this. And then as Saturn goes retrograde now, it's going to bring us back into that space and observe through a different point of view how this experience happens. And then when it goes direct again, it's going to give us then this opportunity to interact with it for a third time. And that third time that we interact with whatever those experiences are will then give us the capacity to process it and apply a new perspective. So we have knowledge and then we apply it to the reality that develops wisdom. And it's this progressive experience as Saturn transits throughout the whole chart, particularly Saturn because of the nature of the way in which emotional crystallization works. Jupiter, the same thing as well, but in this case, Saturn. The nature of our application of this new insight develops the wisdom gained through the transits. Do you understand? So as it's, firstly, Saturn is what would be considered in the third decan of the Sagittarius archetype, okay? So we immediately are accessing the more, not developmental stage of the energy, but more of the mastery of that constellation, okay? So just to kind of give some reference to what I'm talking about here, the first 10 degrees reflect a breaking down process. The next 10 degrees reflects the developmental trial and error experience. And then the third, or the next 10 degrees, which equates to 30, third decan, reflects the nature of application as a way of the wisdom gained through the experience. So the training wheels come off and we apply the knowledge gained in the second decan as a way of developing and evolving that archetypal structure within ourselves and of course on a cosmological level. So as you understand this now, we recognize that for all of us, the simplicity of this transit, wherever it's in your chart, is breaking down or crystallized patterns of emotional, of separateness. Separateness is a powerful thing to understand about the nature of woundedness, because it is where we are, especially with Saturn is the exact energy that allows for us to feel the separateness, because it creates the boundaries in consciousness exactly here. You know, there is fluidity in water. You can move your hand through water like that. Whereas with this tiger iron rock and stone, I can't actually put my fingers through that. So there's immediately a separation from this space and this space over here relative to the boundary. Does that make sense? So separateness is a reflection that is manifested through Saturn. And then what we do is we dissolve those boundaries, which of course, Neptune is in Pisces, Venus is conjunct Chiron in Pisces as well, and Saturn is squaring that stuff. So here you've got the Saturn energy that is connected to the nature of boundaries, making a connection, a square. So it's a first quarter square that's taking place between Venus and Saturn. And the first quarter square represents initiation of something. I have accumulated enough information. I've tried and tested stuff as well. I see the value in certain things. Now I want to bring it out into the world. So we're all got this kind of tango dance in which we feel liberated on one level, but we feel on some level as well that we've got some stuff to kind of still clear out. And that, of course, I feel is in perfect synchronicity with Jupiter still retrograde in Libra, because the ruling planet of Libra is Venus. And of course, Venus is obviously influencing the nature of Jupiter at this stage. Jupiter's ruling planet is Sagittarius, right? Jupiter and Sag are the same archetype, whereas Saturn. So you can see that this energy is ping-ponging from Jupiter to Saturn to Saturn to Pluto to Pluto to Saturn to Saturn to Jupiter to Venus. And it's just like this whole entire triggering effect. And the simplicity of it is that how does your sense of inner relationship to yourself work with the outside world as your internal truth is adjusting itself, and how the outside world is then having to be in alignment with these adjustments with inside of yourself. So that was the new moon in Aries, and the full moon reflected the nature of making the invisible visible, which was the integration of soul into your physical world. And this merging process is such a beautiful thing, because when you understand the Pluto transit through Libra and what it represented on an energetic level, it represented the initiation of change that manifested when Uranus and Pluto made its conjunction in 1965 or 1964 to 1966, where that original conjunction took place that fractured the entire nature of soul desires. So for all of you Pluto and Virgos out there that are born post 1966, I would say that this is the time in which you feel this intense desire for wanting to liberate and break free and to find new purpose and meaning. But you're at a point in which that is so like new. So it's like, what do I do with this freedom? I've waited so long for it. I'm unsure about my space and time. The Pluto and Libras are like, I know that there's something here that I've got free about, but I still have to deal with some karma. And generally the Pluto and Scorpios have come into the dynamics in which you're like already recognizing your soul work at such a young age as it is, because you're so aware of what's happening in your early 20s. Whereas a lot of us don't have haven't had full access to this up until post 2012. So anyway, the point here, again, bringing this back to full circle, is that the nature of Saturn and Sagittarius is bringing down the belief systems and core ideologies and truths that we hold on an individual level, and then the perspective that we have as a collective. Now, you've got to understand something here, that the nature of the belief systems, when influenced by a consensus reality, which is the majority of the planets, this is a reality or a consciousness that is ruled by Saturn. They require external authority in order to understand who they are. They are not aware of the soul dynamics that are available. Whatever truth that the governments put out, whatever information is being said through news and media and propaganda, etc., is easily influenced. And so right now you have fractions, you have different multiple realities existing in different points in space and time with their own truths that are saying, well, my truth is this, your truth is that, and how are we finding this common ground within each other, you know? So this is a very intense time on an individual level to find objectivity, where our own personal truth is needing to be integrated. Simultaneously, we're also learning about the balance of finding equality as other people are doing the same thing. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that I feel is a big part of these planetary energies right now. So enough of me babbling about fun stuff around Saturn and just a kind of like teaching on Saturn over there, and you know, its representation of the retrograde, the reflections. We'll spend some time reflecting and going back over stuff. Experiences will naturally come to you, so don't go looking for them. Just recognize that when you deal with an emotional situation, your focus energy really when it comes to Saturn is looking at what are your core beliefs and how you're interacting with this experience, and is there anything that's limiting you, or is the other, you know, how is the other experience, how what are you seeing basically? Okay, exactly, the waltz of the cosmos. So now I would like to open up the chat for everybody to interact through the Q&A experience. And like I said before, right in the beginning, if you would like me to respond to a personal sort of thing that's in your chart, I'd be happy to do that. But please have your chart with you. And also, I need you to be very descriptive about certain things. And so, yeah, I'll try to help you in terms of whatever it is that you might be seeking regarding clarity and the new moon, full moon. Yeah, pretty much. So, you know, everybody I suspect now at some point in time is probably going, what type of question could I ask? And you've got your little phone over there doing the texting, or yeah. So Simon, where is this Russia-US thing going? Okay, that's an interesting thing. It's a Sagittarius Venus Chiron experience. Okay, let's look like in the world right now at the moment. I haven't followed it much, to be honest, but I have seen like snippets of what is currently going on. The first thing that I want to objectify is that whenever we look at consensus reality, all governments themselves will operate through a consensus reality. Okay, there will be, and consensus reality just represents the status of consciousness evolving through structure. Okay, and so structure in itself is a reflection of governing. Governing is the laws and regulations and rules. This is a Saturn archetype. Okay, so humanity in itself has a population, okay, and we need to govern ourselves. But the nature of our consciousness that has been evolving up until this point in time has been very much influenced by the Saturnian archetype, as well as Pluto South Node through Capricorn, Saturn South Node through Capricorn, and of course Jupiter's South Node through Capricorn. And don't get too caught up on the details over there. It's a very long discussion around the nature of planetary south nodes, but just putting it in a very small context for us on a subject that's massively fascinating to really get involved in, and that's the energetic wave in which humanity has been evolving itself is through the nature of structure. So the way in which we govern ourselves, the laws we create, the experiences, the boundaries we put in place is a way of protecting ourselves, and how we develop a sense of self-identity. This is the key here, okay? Self-identity can only be manifested through the nature of reflection, and reflection can only be manifested through the manifestation of a boundary, okay? So in order for us to have boundary, we have to have a Saturnian archetype, and in that boundary, there is immediate awareness of self, okay? And so because of that, we then immediately have duality. That is why the astrology chart has the cardinal cross too, like that. So 1 equaling complete unity, 2 equaling duality. And when you put it across on your cardinal, on your astrology chart like that, you have the cross that you bear, your karmic dynamic, the physical form, okay, the 4 seasons as an example. So what we're dealing with here is each nation has its own set of cosmological truths, overlays, and belief systems and ideologies, Saturn, Sagittarius. And we are at a point now in our time in which Pluto through Capricorn is moving through the way in which we as human beings, collectively and individually, emotionally identify with ourselves. Okay? How do you emotionally relate to things? What is your emotional relationship to religion or the Bible or to the current let's say, for instance, we look at what is your emotional relationship to the to the pyramids. I mean, these are random things that I'm trying to put out here, but I'm really trying to get you to think about this process. What is your emotional relationship to your mother? What is your emotional relationship to your children? There's a relatability that is reflected through the identities in which each polarity holds. So the question here regarding the nature of, where is it? Here, what is the Russia-US thing going on? You know, we're dealing with Saturn and Sagittarius, their cosmological belief systems and identities, and how we are reorganizing the way in which we govern ourselves. And because Pluto is in Libra, it's all about the nature of equality and fairness and balance, and the nature of how we interact, on how we get our needs met. So there's this huge interaction. Now Uranus is involved here, so there's massive kind of like on edgeness. There's this crisis that's manifesting, North Node in Aquarius and in Virgo. So there's a lot of uncertainty, as I mentioned in the article. There's a lot of uncertainty because not only do we have Mercury retrograde, so the neutrino stream that is influencing consensus reality. Okay, so these planetary energies are influencing these people through consensus reality, through the neutrino stream, and the energies are just reflecting the crisis. This is it. So this very thing that's happening on that global level is what's reflecting on an internal place within ourselves as well. And there's no separation. It's just that that's happening on a more visible stage in which we have access to see, but really it's this process internally that we're also shifting within ourselves. There is a crisis. There's a crisis in our beliefs. There's a crisis in our way in which we can find balance and co-create and integrate and share within each other. There's a crisis in which we realize that the emotional trauma that we carry from our woundedness relative to separateness, in other words, where we've had so many lifetimes in which we've developed masculine energy to protect us from traumatic experiences, that whenever we are engaging in anything, we're fully triggered. Uranus in Aries, the sun in Aries, the ruler of that planet is Mars, fully triggered. The whole entire collective ecosystem's nervous system is freaking out because of the amount of energy that is just purifying all of this crap. So really what's happening on an energetic level, in a deep, like if we had to transcend physical form and understand what's happening behind the scenes, there's just massive panic. There's massive uncertainty. There's massive like unrest. There's massive like, where is security? These are our agendas. This is what we would like to do. This is what we want to push through. And if there's any person that's recognized how much free will you've had over the last couple of days, it's me, because it's like every time I've tried to initiate anything on this direction, there's been 50,000 opportunities and directions manifest simultaneously, and I've just fried myself out. And it's just like, where to go, what to do. So there's a very, very highly developed energy pattern that is stimulating the electrical system internally and externally, that is manifesting all these emotional dynamics, and it's very on edge, you know? So that's my kind of response to that experience. And I hope that that kind of allows for a response that's deeply understanding, but not also revealing to you that, like I said, I don't know the specific in details. Okay. Okay. So let's have a look. I'll go up again. Okay. I have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto retrograde in my birth chart. How does this play out when the planets in transits or retrogrades also? And this is by Lewis. Okay, so whenever you have so many planets in your chart, there's one word that I want you to fundamentally understand as your way of life. You are here to individuate yourself. You are here to literally throw off all of the perspectives and ideas and truths that have been projected onto you as a way of living, and for you to literally, like, like I told a client today with the retrograde planet, it's like, you've got to do this, you've got to bump space out of you like this and say, give me space to find out who I am. So when planets are retrograde, there's a need for strong individuality to manifest, but most of the time this individuality is not something that is developed. So you are developing your ways of, in Uranus's case, to be a rebel. In Jupiter's case, you're being the person that's saying, my whole family's believing in religion and I'm an atheist. It's like, I reject your truth, Jupiter retrograde. Okay, you're like, I have to figure it out for myself. And if I come to the same conclusions as you, I need to do it on my own accord, as an example. Saturn retrograde points to Uranus. So, you know, your parents must have had a fantastic time with you when it came to trying to give you certain structures, and you were like, no, they have to be my way, or I have to recognize it with inside of myself. So, and of course, with all those planets retrograde, everything points to Pluto. Because you've got Pluto retrograde, the nature of your desires are also needing to be individuated and to be evolving at a faster rate than what you've been doing in the past. So there's a very, very internal, introverted necessity for this lifetime. And then when you, of course, have planets that are going retrograde through transits, I've noticed that it actually has a polarity effect in which you experience retrograde natal planets as direct planets when transiting planets are retrograde. Try to say that during a Mercury retrograde experience. Oh my gosh. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, Alexandra asks, question, the full moon was exactly opposite my natal Chiron. Ouch. I'm struggling to pick apart what is the effect of this and what it might be. What might be the Venus retro, which is happening on my natal Venus and Jupiter. Okay, so immediately I think that whenever like natal Venus and Jupiter, this is something in which your value system associated with your truth. Okay, so what cosmology, what truth do you subscribe to? Do you believe in aliens? Do you believe in the shadow government? Do you believe in random things like Anunnaki? Do you believe that Jesus Christ is coming to save us? Like, what is your truth? What is the cosmology that you have? How does that cosmology answer your questions? So again, you know, the cosmology, Sagittarius, Jupiter, how does your truth answer your questions? And then the Venus part is, how do you see the essential needs in that? So for me, as an example, through my life, I've needed astrology to basically articulate what I feel and see with inside of myself. And the reason why is because I've needed a cosmological overlay that's allowed me to intellectualize deep intuitive knowledge. Okay. And so this cosmological overlay then becomes the way in which I value and see the essential needs in whatever it is that I speak. So today you're having an astrology conversation with me, right? And you're listening to me, and I'm telling you about the nature of how these energies are working, but the framework I'm using is a evolutionary astrology influenced paradigm, okay, with its own set of values and cosmological truths. So the same thing's happening for you here. If Venus and Jupiter are, if Venus retrograde is moving on top of your natal Venus as well as your Jupiter, there is an entirely new perspective in which is going to manifest for you over the next coming weeks, because you're about to have a Venus return regarding your value system. So something's happening in your life right now that's asking you to look at life and say, do you still value that truth that way? Do you still value another person's truth? How do you convince and convert yourself of certain things? It's a lot to do with your perspective and how you see the value in that perspective. And that was what I was wanting to say. I see the value in evolutionary astrology, so it immediately becomes something that I emotionally relate to, and then that becomes the cosmological overlay in which I objectify my reality. So the same thing's happening for you. And so of course when you look at Chiron, that is having the full moon, and of course Jupiter happening at this stage, your Chiron's in Libra. So when is your birthday then? You must be a Pluto and Scorpio soul. I'd be interested to know what soul you are, by the way. Anyway, the point is that your outer planets are getting highly affected here. So wherever your Pluto is, wherever your Uranus is, wherever your Neptune is in your chart, I would get an astrologer to look at those outer planets as a way of understanding the deeper core elements that are reflected through Jupiter and Venus. Okay, so let me make this super clear for you. Venus and Jupiter are interpersonal planets. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are outer transpersonal planets. One is abstract and the one is objectifiable. In other words, you can relate to it. Jupiter and Venus relatability. Those outer planets are being triggered, and their awareness is being brought to you through the full moon that landed on Chiron. So whatever happened to you over the last 4 to 5 days as this transit was taking place, look at the cosmological overlay and value in which people are validated to you and you the other way around. And then look at the outer planets where they are in the houses And then you would be able to get a very clear understanding of what that soul's journey is. And that's why I promote like the need to actually say, guys, like we all have iPhones and iPads and all these types of things, but do we ever actually invest in our soul? And I'm not, and this is, nobody has to feel, I'm just saying that it's really important to see that technology and the way that we can spend so much cash on these material things, we've got to actually transmute that into ourselves as well. So spend the time like saving up cash and having an astrology reading, or doing something that allows you to invest in your soul's like conscious growth, and even prioritize it even more than certain physical things as a way of really getting in touch with these dynamics. Okay, so that's that over there. Let's have a look. What else? Okay, so Sophie, I got a lot of customer cancelled their appointments last week, and businesses slow down. And it's related to that retrograde planets. Yes, I feel the same way, actually, to be honest. I feel that a lot of internalization for people has slowed them down from looking outside of themselves and saying, what's going out over there, and really paying attention inwardly. So there's a very internal process happening here. But what of the matrix of control of within government structures? Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is another thing. It's like nobody on this planet is excusable to this. It's just that we are visible to what the media pukes out onto the world, or the unconscious media at least, in terms of, and you must remember, guys, that we're still in a developmental phase on a consensus level in which the separateness that exists within our endocrine system, and the way in which the fear of information, we all have fear to a certain degree, and a lot of fear is being promoted and propaganded into the world as a way of stimulating the need for security and survival. You keep people in security and survival state, the more prone they are to make decisions based on those spaces, and the less likely you're going to have a lot of people opening up to their consciousness and saying, yes, I think I will actually just go out and do this for me today. Oh no, I've got to make a decision, where can I afford that, or I've got to eat. It's like, you can see how the manipulation of frequency manifests through media and stuff like that. And that's a whole new conversation, which I'd love to have at some point, regarding the nature of how frequency of experiences adjusts the neurological way in which your brain functions. And without you even recognizing, a lot of the way in which your chemical reactions are working is based on what you digest on Facebook, as an example, because it's the biggest social media in which you read information. But that's another Saturn and Sagittarius thing, right? What truth are you reading? Can you objectify it? How do you know? Like, have you, like, this person will say that the part of the moon is made out of this. And it's like, okay, that's fantastic. Where did you get that information from? Or I haven't actually seen it with my own eyes or experienced it physically to know if this is the truth. So really, it's just a lot of like, so that's another sort of element to this whole Saturn and Sagittarius thing, is how much discernment do we have when we're digesting information. Okay. Are we in the age of Aquarius yet? Tam, the age of Aquarius is something that probably transitions over a period of 1,000 years. I would say that we are very new into the experience of an Aquarian transition. So yes, we are moving into that right now, but the developmental phase of that experience is something that me and you, and probably 3 generations from here onwards, will not fully have seen its integration point, because the nature of the energy moves very, 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 very slowly. Okay, but Age of Aquarius in itself is forming at this stage, but I don't, like I said, we're still in a transition form at this point in time. How the lunar cycles affect the construction of self-identity. So Bartek, that's actually something we're going to learn in our 6th class of the astrology school, and that's the south node and north node of the moon, and of course the moon itself and its relationship to Saturn. And that reminds me, any person that is wanting to learn astrology, I will set up a astrology school and accommodate any of you that want to learn. Just email me and let me know what your availability is, and when would you like to begin. And if you've got more than like 2 people, I'd be happy to start up a school for any of you and teach you a 6-week course on all the 12 archetypes, plus the nature of what Pluto represents, and of course the south and north nodes, so that you can objectify an astrology chart for yourself in terms of soul dynamics. But to answer that question very, very quickly, for anybody else, of course, that's not doing the course, it is the transition from past experiences into new experiences relative to the moment. So in the last half an hour, you've been watching this, you have had experiences in imprinting on you, okay, consistently, and the future is a very abstract experience, so we don't know where this conversation is going yet, we don't know how it's going to manifest itself. So the relationship between how we feel in the future and what we can reflect back on in the past is the south and north nodes, and then how we're experiencing this moment, and now this moment, and now this moment, and now this moment. That whole entire thing you just experienced right now, that's part of something that has just transpired. So the formation of self-identity is an ongoing repetitive experience in which we are receiving imprinting that over a period of time reflects the nature of what it looks like. So the reflection of the past is a manifestation of the progression of the future as we experience it in the moment. Okay. So hi Simon, I have Saturn, Sun, Uranus and Mercury in Sagittarius. I have Pluto and Mars in Scorpio in the 11th house, Scorpio. I finally found out the name of my chronic health condition. Will I begin to heal this year? So wow, that's a really interesting question. I would say to you that okay, let me just see this again. So Pluto's you're a Pluto and Scorpio person, and you also have Mars there as well. Is Mars behind Pluto or in front of Pluto in terms of its natal position? Because that would be interesting to hear relative to the conjunction. Because it's in my opinion that when you have balsamic experiences, there's a lot of things in which you have to go through experiences that you surrender to as a way of deepening a very like transcendental experience, and through illnesses and stuff. I'm not saying that happens for everybody and that's the totality of the truth, but it's been through my experience of like speaking to people with balsamic phase planets that there's generally something that dissolves your ego. So I don't really know, to be honest, but what I can say to you intuitively when I read that was as long as you actively participate in the experience of recognizing what it is and allowing yourself to make conscious choices in which you are changing your patterns of behavior that has led to whatever karmic dynamics you carry with you, I don't see why not that there is a potential for that to actually be healed, okay? Okay. How important are the degrees of movement? Both Saturn and Venus are 27 degrees. Honestly, I think that they're really, really important. There's an astrologer that works well with degrees called Christopher Witecki. And if you just check out his internet website. He works a lot with degrees. To me personally, my understanding of degrees and where they are is that they are at the end of a cycle. So we're dealing with the training wheels that have come off and the universe has said, you're on your own. And can you navigate this? Right? So there's a lot of like experimental energy patterns that we develop here. There's a lot of like trying it out for the first time and really being able to integrate the lessons and master it. It's a mastering element, 27, 28, and 29 degrees. So yes, I do feel that they are important, and it's not a coincidence that both these planets are at that point. And how does it vibrate with planets at the same degree in your natal chart? I think that for me personally, again, I'm not an expert in understanding this process, but again, intuitively, as I would respond to this, I would say that the relativity of planets that are at same degrees through transit as they are in natal planets are highly emphasized, extra sensitive, so there's a lot of thing there. Okay. So, Alexandra, Simon, what do you think about my version on what the 8th house is about relative to the 2nd house? I think it's about learning to value the other person as you value yourself. So are you saying, is that what you mean about your version on the 8th house is relative to the 2nd? It's about learning to value the other person as you value yourself. That's a really, really cool, I never looked at it that way, to be honest, but maybe, I have, just not in that kind of formation. But yes, I mean, the Pluto 8th house, the 8th house is about relative to the 2nd. I think it's about learning to value the other person as much as you value yourself. Yes, absolutely. I do think that that's a very valid point. And the reason why I say that is because whenever you have 8th house lessons, So Pluto, like Scorpio lessons, you're dealing with the nature of emotional intimacy, emotional transparency, like feeling vulnerable, and sharing. And we can only share, generally speaking, in a very deep way through Scorpio, our resources, and the resources is reflected through Taurus. So when we are within our polarity, if we have like a Pluto 8th house, or if we've got planets in the 8th house as an example, we are developing its polarity to integrate the resources within ourselves so that we don't develop codependent experiences in which the resources of others is what's empowering us. And then through separation, at some point in time, we are disempowered because no longer are those resources something that we've empowered ourselves, because they've been lent by other people. So as we develop the resources within ourselves, we become more empowered to share with others. And in a way, we do actually value the relationship, because generally speaking, 8th and 2nd house is relationship archetypal structures. We are able to actually value another person as we value ourselves. So yes, I do feel that that's a really cool way of seeing that. Yvonne Bird asks, how do we best ground and handle this energy? So I've been asking the same question. I don't know, to be honest. I have literally, I carry this tiger iron around. It's hugely heavy to kind of ground myself over here. I would say that going outside and spending time away from technology is a very good thing, because overstimulation of the mind allows then the nervous system to be overstimulated as well. So I would say that this is a great opportunity to kind of just like be in a very Piscean state. Honestly, if I had the opportunity to be in a very Piscean stage, I don't. Unfortunately, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old, and their demands through their electrical system aren't as fried as mine and my partner's. So, we don't really get the opportunity to kind of just like chill out and sun gaze, or go down to the local kind of like restaurant and just sit there and zone out to TV, as an example, while this energy moves through us. So I would say spacing out would be the best thing, to be honest. That's my personal opinion, but that's just because spacing out means there's no stimulation of the electrical system while it's being actually amplified during the stage. So shower, bath, whatever it is, get into water and just chill out. It's a lot of just chilling out stuff, basically. Venus and Pisces. Okay, Tanya River has Mars retrograde in the 8th house, so you're dealing a lot with emotional intimacy as well. Okay, Jupiter's in Aries, so it makes sense to me, Fema, that this would be a lifetime in which you're developing a new belief system in your life, and that belief system in itself, of course, is probably coming through a new discovery of how to heal your chronic illness. Okay, so what are the lessons when Saturn transits the North Node? This is a very fascinating thing, because Saturn transits the North Node, just as any planet that's on the North Node, is that you are here to emotionally stabilize yourself. You're here to emotionally develop boundaries between yourself and other people relative to your chart. So it can vary from person to person, but you're learning Saturn lessons basically, and your perspective is highly attuned to needing to form and ground and allow those energies to be in. But if Saturn's already on your North Node, you've already been focusing on it in previous lifetimes. So whether it's a need to liberate yourself from previous conditions, whether it's a need to develop strong boundaries, whether it's a need to be highly organized on an emotional level in your life, to get control of your life relative to maybe lots of Pisces energy, that would be the way in which you would respond to that, okay? Okay. So let's have a look. Okay. What is Saturn in Pisces lesson? Saturn in Pisces lesson is it's like it's like a paradox, because I'm sure some of you at some point in time have looked when you've got like the North Node, the South Node in the first house in Pisces, and you have Aries and Pisces together, and they're completely random archetypes. The same thing with Saturn and Pisces. Saturn and Pisces is a soul that needs to come into this lifetime and to develop a self-identity that is very much about acceptance, Pisces, and allowance, and also about probably forming a reality in which your relationship to your authority is deeply developed through following your dreams, like being inspired to follow what it is that is meant for you to do in this lifetime. Very briefly. Okay, so I can see Marvia's saying, doesn't believing in such a thing make us weak as human beings? We are already enough materialized, now running after further material success through such mythologies. How will it help? It's the truth. It is the truth. Like fundamentally, the material form in itself, in its highest state, is the realization that it's just the karma that you carry in your body and you have to burn it off, basically. And the body just represents the crystallization of those emotional patterns. Okay, so okay, what does Chiron conjunct Libra North Node in the 11th house possibly indicate? I'm trying to put this together. Okay, so whenever Chiron is involved in any of our charts, it's always pointing towards, in my opinion, Uranus and Saturn. And then, of course, if you want to really get cool on the stuff over here, look to Pluto and Neptune, but specifically speaking, Uranus and Saturn. So study Uranus in your chart, study Saturn in your chart, and then what you do here is you recognize the developmental phase between how does your structure of how you define yourself as a human being reflect the nature of how your ongoing individuality is being formed in this lifetime. Okay, so like raising vibrations as an example, and YouTube and the work that I do over here and stuff has an ego self-identity. That's Saturn. And then the Chiron reflects the relationship to how does that form my individuated growth process. Uranus is about how we are awakening the Kundalini within ourselves. So what is the spiritual story that we've come to awaken within ourselves? What have we come to see as a reflection? And so studying Uranus will show you the development in which you are coming here to decondition yourself from the past identities and what is here for you to potentially grow into. And whenever we look at something that we're growing into, it requires structure, and that would be Saturn. So that's why you look to Saturn and Uranus in your chart. Now, in your particular case, because it's on the North Node and it's in Libra, and it's in the 11th house, it seems to me as if there's a need for objectification around the way in which you relate to others and how others relate to you, so that you can then become fully included in the experience of groups and identities and sharing and a way of being embraced, but also sharing how other people share as well, and being hypersensitive to how we maybe are not, how group dynamics can have their little cliques, and how group dynamics can be favoritism to certain people, and where that imbalance lies. And you're probably hypersensitive to needing to find groups that reflect interaction with you as a way of embracing you, but also the ability for you to share as well as a way of learning give and take in relationship dynamics. Okay. Wow, there is an intense amount of questions coming my way. How long has the stream been going on for, by the way? Let's have a look. What's out at the bottom over there? Yes, Hamaza, can you predict one's sexuality from astrology? Yes, you can, using evolutionary astrology, in my opinion, because of the nature of how we define the polarities within our bodies. Remember, when we identify sexuality from a soul dynamic, we're just looking at a principal form of expression of masculine energy moving outward and feminine energy, which is receptive, and we're looking at the interchange in dynamics. So like in my case, I have a strong karmic dynamic in which I do believe within my lifetimes that there is a gender switch that's taking place for me. Relative, I don't know if it's masculine to feminine or feminine to masculine. It's something that I'll explore a bit later on in life, but yes, you can. Are the planets affecting the body electrically? Yes, because of the neutrino field, and especially because the neutrino field is being moved through the sun, and the sun is conjunct Uranus. Everything is massively hyper amplified during this period of time. So even for myself, as I sit here today, is what I really needed to do, but it's just manifesting in a very intense way. Okay. I think what I did what I didn't do correctly over here, and this is my Saturn lessons in this lifetime, is that, this was a lot about, the, what's the point? What was I wanting to say? A lot about the new moon and full moon experience, but I just answered random questions as well. So if anybody else has got questions regarding how the full moon has affected their natal charts and stuff, then I'd be happy to respond to that as well as a teaching for others. Because at the end of the day, this is like a massive teaching for everybody that's sitting here watching, because you're getting to learn about the different ways and how astrology can manifest itself, and how I teach, and how I also do readings and stuff. So that's another thing that you can also do if you, at some point when you are ready. Beginner's course astrologies, learn your charts is something that I love to do as well, and of course any like personal readings as well. Okay, so let's see. So what do you define as a Piscean state? Jacqueline. Take loads of and you'll know this through our own interaction, because I spoke to you the day after I had surgery. Take loads of calming tablets, and then just like be in the state in which everything's like, yeah, it's cool. Or as people would do, they smoke peyote or do those types of things where your whole entire electrical system is completely flooded with dopamine or the melatonin. In which your state, your frequency, your state is very much like you're chilled, you're relaxed, everything's okay. The world might be going insane, but hey, you know what? It's a very passive state in which there is just total acceptance and embracing. So I'm not in a Pisces state right now because my energy is just coming through. But hopefully at some point in time wherein I could kind of just like sit with myself for 10 minutes quietly, I'd be able to calm myself down to a point in which my parasympathetic nervous system is activated and my body is very much like in a chilled, relaxed state, just like, hey, everything's cool. So that would be a Piscean state. Does that answer that question? If not, I'd be happy to kind of add to that. Okay, so that's interesting. Is that Imran Khan, one of the famous cricketers for Pakistan? He must be, that he won the World Cup in 1992. I know that he was actually a politician. I read up on him probably over the last couple of years, about 6 months, where I noticed that he had transitioned into a politician. There's a possibility. I have actually no idea, to be honest. If it's in his sort of design that he needs to be in a position of power as a way of influencing, and the soul wants to feel those experiences, then I'm sure that'd be the case. Okay. Right. Okay. So what else is there? I'm just going up the chat over here. Okay. Let's have a look. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, what else is there? Okay, hey Simon, I see a 22 degrees Libra along with my moon at 19 degrees Lilith and 20 degrees Eros, all in Libra. Can you tell me what the effects of this new moon have been? And that's Sydney C. And she was talking about having the IC, which is the bottom of the chart, your kind of sort of like emotional security patterns in Libra. I feel like intuitively, just straight off the bat, as I read that information, it's got a lot to do with your emotional relationship to codependency. How do you integrate yourself into how do you emotionally integrate yourself into relationships in which you feel free in your ability to fully express your desires and your experience of embracing another person, where your sense of identity is not lost in the other person's identity and the structure of the relationship. So relationships themselves always manifest a third identity, two people interacting with each other, and then this third kind of like cosmological overlay that says this is what we are going to hold as a way of what we define ourselves through, right? So when you have things like asteroids like Lilith as an example, the need to really, really liberate yourself from the conditions that prevent you from feeling as if your desires can be fully experienced through relationships, that would need a lot of freedom in relationships. I would also say that that with Eros over there as well, there's a deep desire for your again, your ability to feel like, that's what I said, just freedom, this like intense freedom to just come out in relationships and to allow yourself to not draw people that are codependent in other relationships, but also for you to be able to not draw in people that are wanting to be nurtured by you, like to be looked after you in that sense. And for you to be able to feel that you can actually be safe and secure within your own needs, but then also be able to work through relationships in which you don't lose your sense of identity. Okay. All right. So Hamza, let's help you out. Let's give you a little bit of attention. You've probably got a lot of Leo in your chart. Is believe in God interlinked with astrology? So this is an interesting thing. If that is so, then it means no place for atheism in astrology. Now, this is a really, really interesting question, and it's almost as if my higher self is giggling a little bit in this communication, because I feel like there's a great opportunity for me to respond around a deep like sharing here, and so I'm just going to do that. Okay, so is belief in God interlinked with astrology? So firstly, how do we define God? That's the first question. How do we define God? Now, to me, the relationship of how we've defined God in the past relative to layers of patterning that human beings have been evolving through, okay, and the structure of brain development and the neurological as well as emotional dynamics that we all are, that all interlink and interweave the nature of reality. God in itself is a manifested identity structure in which human beings relate to as an existential way of then being able to help us make sense of the phenomena of reality. And that has been the past. So it's been existential. The future and the Aquarius age is the realization that the pineal gland that sits in the seat of the limbic system, and it secretes certain chemicals that has got connected with the endocrine system, as well as the way in which we access higher states of consciousness. That is the way in which we experience oneness. We experience love, we experience embracement, we experience connectivity. And it also relates to the connection that the pituitary gland and the pineal gland and the hypothalamus and the limbic system all are working together as a way of sending chemical reactions down to the nervous system, and then for us to feel either as if this is an opportunity to fight or flight or to be embraced. So when we recognize this process, we understand the true meaning of oneness and not the new age ideologies that have been presented in which everything is about one. Because when we do that, we immediately then stop ourselves from identifying that even though on a higher dimensional states there is no separation, on the physical plane we need that duality in order for us to objectify the karmic dynamics that we bring through in this dimension. Otherwise we would have manifested. This is the point of evolutionary astrology. It's to help you understand what these separating desires are. So when you answer this question, what level are we talking? In a consensus reality, the development of consciousness is still evolving through duality, and it has no sense of self. So because of that, anything that is existential then becomes the father figure, and the father figure then is the replacement in which we have developed our relationship to our own personal authority, which has been completely violated over the last 6,000 years due to patriarchy. And that's nothing that's wrong with it. I'm not, this is just an opportunity to understand what we're dealing with here. So when you step out into the wild and you spend a month in the wild with absolutely no technology or any of the ways in which you've existed in today, you'll start to understand very, very clearly that in past like experiences, the way that we relate to experiences that we can't understand, we develop a mythical archetypal relationship too. And then that then becomes this illusion, as it were, in which we develop things like deities and gods and existential saviors that then become the vehicle in which the Virgo Pisces axis, which has been manifesting over the collective consciousness for the last 2,000 years, has been the mode of way in which we've lived. So fundamentally, what we're dealing with here is that no, God does not exist in astrology in the context of an existential savior, because then immediately we are in separateness. But when we recognize that the astrology is the reflection of our own consciousness as we interact with it, and then it is a reflection of ourselves, then we realize that the separation is only something that is here to objectify our emotional dynamics, and we purify and rinse them. And then as we surrender to them and we watch our story, we begin to recognize that there's a mission that the soul's on. And that interlinking between the personality and the higher self becomes the merging of source, which is God. And so yes, God does exist through the astrology, and you can be an atheist to use astrology, because there is no need for a belief system. It's validated there. Capricorn is the bark on a tree, and it's the protection shell of a crab, just as Leo is the colors on the plants, just as Scorpio and Taurus reflects the nature of a tree trunk, stability and growth, and mutable energies like Pisces and Sagittarius and Gemini all reflect the branches of a tree. And the receptivity of oxygen that plants have is the process of the feminine principle, and the masculine principle is the energy that breaks through from a seed that comes through the ground. And it is this interlinking process that we call life, which is simple. That is what God is. It's just life, and our relationship to how our body interfaces with it. So, yes. Oh, I love that. I love that state. By the way, I have Neptune at 27 degrees conjunct the galactic center. And so I have Saturn there right now. And I started the YouTube channel because I didn't know how to ground into my physical form higher insights. And I still don't know how to do it yet. So it comes out of sporadic bursts of randomness. But I'm learning how to do it progressively. I will get better and better at being able to be very, very grounded in my body, so that I can access the more beauty of what that galactic center energy is moving through me at this stage. So fun times. I love it. You can see the excitement of me as I get that. Okay. I love that. That was so much fun. Just give me a moment here to allow my body. See, so what's happening right now is the experience of enthusiasm and joy. It is the polarity to depression. So right now I'm interacting with joy, and that's what it means to follow your heart. It's the relatability to your life in which you feel embraced by the joyness, but the joyness only manifests through the pineal gland and the pituitary gland as it releases certain hormones within the body to create the feeling of oneness and embracingness. How many times have you had an argument with somebody and said, oh yes, in this next moment I'm going to hug you? It just doesn't work. You know, that's why we have to, like we're in an argument, we have to step back from each other for a while so that the body can actually dissolve the current like sympathetic adrenals that are moving through as the electrical system's pointing out saying we've got a fight or flight over here. You understand? So when we kind of had time to reflect and we go, I'm sorry, the reason why remorse and sorry is reflected through dissolving things, it's because Pisces, by the way, this is so Pisces reflects mythological archetypes, whereas the actual application of Pisces in itself is the relationship to forgiveness through the dissolving of separation. And that's where a lot of us on this planet right now are all being triggered to do, because Venus is in Pisces. And it's like, how are we recognizing and forgiving ourselves for the experiences that have happened in the past in which our own unconsciousness has created woundedness that we have come to resolve through the realization of oneness. So we're developing boundaries that helps us develop healthy respect for ourselves, and the experience of the woundedness develops that. But then we also see that the woundedness in itself wasn't a manifestation from an intention of pure evil. It was just this, our own personal who we are as people, and what trauma we carry and all of that type of stuff, that underdeveloped part of ourselves as how we interact with each other. And that's where you can really become compassionate for us, which is a very, very big thing. Compassion is a very, very powerful thing for us to understand, because it heals a lot of disease. okay, dis-ease, fluidity, the ability for the emotions to move through us. So again, the point here is that when you're dealing with, and a practical application of these energies in this full moon is that the body in itself, through its release of its certain hormones into the body and the neurological pathways and the way that we objectify reality. I mean, think about it, guys. When was the last time you felt like making a super positive choice when you were extremely hungry? Right? How many people out there get immediately like super like moody when you're hungry? Okay. Think about the chemical like stability that is existing in your body right now, influencing the mental state in which you are, the like intellectual state. So the cosmological overlay, it's like, no, I don't want to do this. Whereas your emotions are influencing it a lot. Okay. Think about this time in which you got embraced by somebody validated you deeply, and then they encouraged you to kind of like go do something. Generally speaking, you're on such a high that you're just like, yes, I'll just go and do it without thinking about it. Again, it's about emotional balance on neurological body. And if you truly want to recognize how to heal the body, understand the nervous system, study the nervous system, study the endocrine system, study the way in which the body works on a biological level. Okay. So again, so much enthusiasm getting me jabbed up over here, and I'm just like loving that experience. And because I'm loving it, I'm feeling my soul like illuminate itself. And that's, you know, this is a literal version of that answer in that sense. Okay. Okay, so the first thought I had was ask some political, personal related issues. Okay, so this is again, but then the inner intellectual argument gene kicked in. Fantastic. I love that. This is a great opportunity to objectify the nature of information. Okay, that's a good thing. So again, when we're looking at things, the neutrino stream, which is the fabric of reality. I mean, neutrinos, go read up on them. There is a, I will post in the link after I've recorded this thing. For everybody, go read about what neutrinos are. Neutrinos are little particles of information that moves through the universe that carries information. It's smaller than atoms in that sense. So you're looking at the way in which we have 65 billion neutrinos moving through our bodies in the second. That is chi and prana, right? That's what the ancients used to call it. The sun, it moves through the sun, light. So whenever the sun is transiting through the solar system, that's why we have your birthday, because it's the illuminated part. That's where the neutrino light is moving through. Now, the template in which the consciousness is manifesting itself is relative to the emotional dynamics and growth process. So when you're dealing with a consensus world, like politicians, for instance, the emotional development of spirituality is not actually there, because the experience of higher consciousness is not the soul's desire. The soul's desire is to move through time and space. So when you're looking at politics in itself, it is a very different story to the nature of a soul manifested itself in a different state, in which the neutrino stream is going to affect them differently. So when you're looking at astrology, all astrology is doing is not actually enacting life, it's reflecting it. That's all it is. And what we're doing is we're just accessing interdimensional knowledge through an archetypal story that is allowing us to objectify the phenomena of reality. That's what it is. Okay. Okay, so okay, so guys, I'm going to take an opportunity to say thank you very, 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 very much for giving me this opportunity to feel as if I could, you know, talk to a load of people. Even though from my end, really, I'm just, you know, babbling in a microphone and a camera over here. This was amazing. I love this experience. Thank you so much. I'm going to wind down over here right now. And probably, it's happened to me a few times, actually, to be honest, when I walk down the stairs. It's like you need to be grounded in your body. So I've slipped on the stairs a couple of times over the period of time that I've lived over here. So I know that's the best way in which I can recognize if I'm fully in my body is to walk down the stairs and know if I'm doing it well. Anyway, so I loved sitting here today doing this. I'm grateful for your support on Raising Vibrations in the YouTube. And as always, I'll continue to keep on sharing as much as I can regarding the wisdom and doing the thing I love the most. And What else was there? Be sure to check the new moon in Libra, full moon in Libra article, which I'll post here. And studying astrology on my website. You can also check that out as well as learn your charts. Email me regarding any services you want to do, readings, etc. If you just want to generally chat about life in itself, then that's also the case. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is my software naturally adjusting to different programs. Okay, so take care, everybody. Thank you very much for sharing the space. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week, and do more videos, please. I absolutely, hopefully going forward, this is what I definitely want to do. It's where my greatest joy lies, to be honest. So yeah, cool. All right, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.